Here's a video on factoring trinomials with a special emphasis on a method known as the slide and divide method, or the earmuff method. It is known as the earmuff method because if I take the leading coefficient, which is the number multiplied by the x squared term of our quadratic trinomial, and if I multiply that by the constant at the end, and I connect them in that type of fashion, it becomes sort of like a pair of earmuffs holding the two ends together, our leading coefficient and our constant. What we would do next is we would temporarily drop the leading coefficient. So although there's a 2 here, I'm just going to write down the x squared piece of that. The middle term is unaffected, it's brought down as is. And at the end now, instead of having a 2, I'm going to multiply the leading coefficient with the constant. 2 times 2 is 4, so I'm going to bring down a plus 4. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my new quadratic trinomial here, my modified one. X squared minus 5x plus 4. And what we need to think of is the factors that multiply to make that trinomial. And again, in this case, we have an a. Our a value is now a 1. Our b value is now a -5. And our c value is a 4. So what I need to do is I need to have numbers that multiply to be a times c. A is 1, c is 4. So a times c would be 1 times 4, which is 4. So I need to think about all the numbers that multiply to be that value. So I'm going to think about all the numbers that multiply to be a positive 4. 2 times 2. 4 times 1. We could have a -2 and a -2. 2 negatives multiplied makes a positive. We could have -4 times -1. 2 negatives multiplied make a positive product. And we also need the pair of numbers to add to be the b value, which is again the -5. These are not going to add to be that value, neither are these. However, these would, -4 plus a -1 would be a -5. It would be the same as -4 minus 1. So we're going to go ahead and use these. So we have a -4 and a -1. Once again, that's because -4 times -1 would multiply to be that AC value, and they also add to be that B value of the middle term. So I'm going to go ahead and use -4 and -1. I'm going to put x minus 4 and x minus 1. These are the factors that multiply to be this product, this quadratic trinomial. Our next step would be to remember how our original leading coefficient was a 2. We modified it in the steps, but our original leading coefficient was a 2. So I have to divide each of these numbers by that leading coefficient. And then I'm going to simplify wherever possible. So here, I can make this x minus 2, since 4 divided by 2 is 2. The minus sign comes down, and so did the x in front of it. In this case, though, I can't reduce 1/2. I can't reduce that fraction. It's already in lowest terms. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the denominator in front of the variable. So now it's going to be a 2x. The denominator comes in front of the variable, and then the rest comes down. The -1 comes down. And here is your answer. If we factor this trinomial above my hand, we're going to end up having the factors that are circled here. Once again, this is called the slide and divide method. Basically what you're doing is you're sliding the leading coefficient to the position of the constant, then you're multiplying. So step 1 is slide. Step 2 is multiply those values, that leading coefficient and the constant. Then you're going to factor. You're going to factor this new trinomial, modified one, and then you're going to divide by that leading coefficient that you started with. And then simplify wherever possible. In cases where you can't simplify, it's going to be like bottoms up, right? So the bottom of the denominator comes up to this position in front of the variable. So that could be referred to as bottoms up. The denominator comes up and goes in front of the variable. And this is how you would use that method known as the slot and divide method. It's one of many. Choose the one that you're most comfortable with.